Welcome to Satsang. So today I've been asked to talk about Satori. It's a Sanskrit word that describes a glimpse of true nature, a glimpse of beingness, a glimpse of truth, a glimpse of true self. And so people can have Satoris at any time for any reason. The idea is the Satori gives you an understanding that there's something more than you are, more than you as a mind, more than you as a body, that you are something quite amazing that is non-personal. And so someone has a Satori, maybe because of self-inquiry or meditation, and they have a Satori and they get to know themselves in some way as the vastness of beingness. Now that can be quite mild, to just knowing self as silence and stillness, to knowing self as the whole universe, every particle at once. And so there's different levels or different degrees of Satori. These encourage a person to move further towards finding themselves as the truth, so it fires up the thirst. So people come into satsang and quite often start losing, their mind starts expanding, they start losing thoughts, and in that space Satori can occur quite readily. And it can be a minor Satori. All of a sudden you know yourself, you're just emptiness, just there's nothing here, very small, very silent, very still. Or it can be a fully blown Satori where you know yourself as the universe. And sometimes when that occurs, it can cause a problem because the mind loves to compare one thing against another. And so I recall at 1987, I had a major Satori while self-inquiring. I'd been walking along the foreshore in Adelaide, Perth, self-inquiring for about 4 hours, just asking the question, who am I? Answering it and then discounting it. And this is a Zen methodology of self-inquiry. And at some point, there was this, it was like an echo going back. And then there was this vast nothingness. And then the knowing of every particle of that at once. And it was just so big, so profound, and every particle was love. And that went on for a while. I lost time completely, so I have no idea how long it went on for. But the effect of it lasted for months. And the problem came when I decided to look for that again, thinking that's what it was all about, not realizing that that was a major Satori, and awareness can be aware of itself and there's just nothing there, which is very simple and very mild. And so I was constantly looking for this big Satori and probably missing what was actually happening because I wasn't looking in the right direction. And so with Satori can be a great aid for firing up thirst to find self as truth, recognition that we're not the mind, we're not the body, that we're actually something much greater, but it can also be a bit of a trap. So in Buddhism, sometimes they refer to having a Satori as meeting the Buddha on the path. And in a way it is. But if you meet the Buddha on the path, you should kill the Buddha. And what that refers to is leave that memory out. Don't compare. Don't make comparison. Because you do not know what's going to happen next. And you're projecting that you do know. And now you're locked in a dream of comparison. And so you have a Satori, let it go. Don't use it as a comparison, because the next Satori might be a minor one that you may miss, because you're looking for something bigger. So the methodology of self-inquiry that I was using in those days was effective. It took a long time, but it was effective. The Zen methodology of self-inquiry, asking the question, who am I? Answering it, and then discounting the answer completely, and then asking the question again, who am I? The Advaita Vedanta methodology of self-inquiry is also very, very effective. Asking the question, who am I, or who's aware, or what's aware, and not answering it. An attempt to turn awareness that's aware of the mind onto itself. And that works too. I remember using that and finding just emptiness and vastness and nothingness, and it was definitely beyond the mind. The other methodology of finding Satori that I found effective was being in the presence of people who are enlightened or who are awake, and tuning in to that energy field. And so I used my awake teachers as a doorway to find more of my own true self. But there's a little bit of an oddness in saying that, because when you find true self, it is in no way personal. In fact, there's an absence of the I. There's an absence of the one that's looking. So the English language doesn't really cater for us talking about truth. It caters for the I. And that can be in the way sometimes. There is no such thing as personal enlightenment or selfish enlightenment. That's aware of the mind becomes aware of itself. In a way, it has nothing to do with the mind. In a way, the mind is out of the picture, except that the mind is perceiving what's happening. And so Satori is very beautiful. And you could say that someone who's awake, enlightened, is in Satori 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Otherwise, they're actually not awake. Otherwise, they're still probably practicing. To know self as truth, there is an absence of you as an I. And that might come as a revelation to some people as well. But that's how it is. There's an absence. Because it's not the I that wakes up. It's a dream that learns how to surrender. And that's aware of the I becomes aware of itself. That's a little different. That can be facilitated by the mind through the practice of self-inquiry, practice of meditation, the practice of openness. It's best facilitated when all the obstacles that are in the way of enlightenment are removed. Because no matter how many times you have Satori, if the mind is not ready to support what has been found by getting out of the way, by having its obstacles removed, the likelihood is that awareness will come back to the mind, to the I, and leave itself. And so what is found is actually seemingly lost. It can't be lost because beingness is always here, but awareness is not aware of itself. And so there's a sense of loss. And if someone's having Satoris and then coming back to ego-based reality, it's a bit like heaven and hell, because in Satori, there's profound contentment for no reason. In ego-based reality, there's constantly desiring for things to be different than how they are. Could be for another Satori. So all the obstacles that are in the way of higher consciousness need to be challenged and removed. And then Satori can last continuously. And that is enlightenment. 24/7. It's up to you. What are you going to do? it kind of runs against nature to wake up. So it takes a bit of effort to remove the obstacles, to learn to be that open, to learn to be that undefended, to learn to not contract to life every time it doesn't go your way. But as far as I can see, there is no better game in town than higher consciousness. So, are there any questions, any statements, or any challenges to this teaching today?
The first question is as follows. Does desiring a Satori strongly help one have a Satori?
Probably not. Strong desiring keeps that awareness locked onto the mind. So the desiring itself is in the way, yet without the desiring, you won't actually do what's required to pursue or find Satori. And so it is a requirement that you actually chase it through spiritual practice. Though Satori can happen, just walking on a beach or driving a car, or it can happen at any time because it is real. What we are is real. Beingness is real. It's just that generally speaking, awareness is locked onto the mind and through the senses, the world. But I think the first time I had a Satori was when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I had no idea what it was. I just lost time. I lost all identity as a somebody, as a person, and it was just everything was empty. But I was a Roman Catholic schoolboy at the time, so that didn't make sense. I didn't really want to tell anybody because they would have thought I was nuts. But it was very profound. It didn't fire up the thirst for truth because I didn't know what had happened at that stage. It wasn't until I got into Eastern mysticism that I realized, I had a Satori. But all desires keep awareness locked on to the mind.
The following question is from Sean. Can you give more details about the method of asking, what am I, and then discounting it?
Okay, so it's a Zen methodology, and I first learnt it in Italy. It was called an Enlightenment Intensive, and it was a 7-day course where you self-inquired with another person, with a partner, for the whole day, and you were in silence the rest of the time. And so the person who was partnered with you would ask the question, tell me who you are. You would answer it. When you'd finished answering, that question would then be discounted. And the questioner would ask you again, tell me who you are. And so basically it was a program of elimination, which gave me a terrible headache after a week. But I continued that practice when I came back to Perth while walking, just because I wanted to do it. And one day, after walking probably for about 4 hours along the foreshore, I just found myself as the universe. I had just gone beyond. I hope that answers that, Sean.
Is Satori the same as enlightenment in any way?
Some say Satori is enlightenment. There's different definitions depending on what religion you're talking to. From my perspective, I see Satori as a glimpse of reality, a glimpse of truth, whereas I see enlightenment as a continuing awareness on awareness, awareness aware of itself, or beingness aware of itself. And so I see a difference, but in some schools that they see Satori as enlightenment, but they see Satori as continuous as well.
So what allows you to be enlightened instead of just having a Satori?
My understanding of what facilitates that is a mind that does not continually contract to life, a mind that stays equanimous, a mind that stays quite level even when under fire. Because particularly in the early stages of enlightenment, there's a certain fragility in it. So awareness has found itself, or beingness has found itself, and there's a knowing self as everything or nothing, whichever way you want to put it. But that seems fragile. It's almost like awareness isn't really clamped onto itself very strongly, and it can quite easily leave itself and go back to the mind. But after a while, what I noticed is awareness locks on like two really powerful magnets that you just can't pull apart. And no matter what you do, it's locked on. And so you're in the world, but you're knowing yourself as beingness at the same time because of this locked on affair. And for me, that happened after about 1.5 years after awakening. There was just this solid locked on, and nothing I did or nothing I said or nothing that happened in my life shifted that lock on. I hope that helps.
The following question has been asked by a viewer. Can awareness only lock into the body, the mind, and itself?
Can awareness only lock onto the body, the mind, and itself? Well, awareness can be anywhere. Awareness can be on the mind, and at the same time it can be through the senses, the ears and the eyes and touch. It can be out here in the world, and at the same time it can also be on beingness. So someone who's awake has that facility of awareness on itself, or beingness on itself, maybe awareness on the mind and whatever the mind's activities are, maybe thinking, and also on the world. So awareness is, and it can be into the body as well. So awareness can be through all of those things. But for most human beings, awareness is just locked onto the mind, in the body to some degree, and out on the world. And so they don't have the awareness on itself. So they're missing that part. So they get to think that they are human beings. They get to think there is somebody that's been somewhere and is going somewhere. But that's not true. We are beingness. We are that. And when Satori happens, or awakening happens, there's the recognition that you are that, and you cannot be the mind. You cannot be the body. They are just appearances in who you are.
You had a major Satori in the late 80s, and it was another 11 years until your final awakening. What happened in those 11 years?
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, after the major awakening in 1987, I did everything possible to try to find that space again, but I was unsuccessful. The thing is, I was missing it, because when I look back on it now, for 6 months after that Satori, I was still finding beingness, but I wasn't recognizing it. We're not programmed to see emptiness. We're not programmed to see stillness. We're not programmed to see silence. We're programmed to see movement and sound. And so I was looking in the wrong direction in a way. And also my ego had claimed the Satori as its own. And the ego cannot do that, because it's nothing to do with the ego. But the ego loves to claim things. And so I was a bit lost. And so what I settled for was the pursuit of heart. I recognized that I was going to have to be here, and what was the only way to live here for me was to be in service of heart, because there's a certain beauty in that, and there's a certain happiness in that. And so I dedicated my life to being in service of heart. And to that, I went back to school and trained as a naturopath and a psychotherapist, so I could have some skills to help people to be in service. And for 11 years, I was in service. But during those 11 years, I meditated every day. I self-inquired every day. I practiced openness every day. I had a spiritual life while having a family life, because I had 3 children to take care of, and a wife, and a business. But my spiritual life was very important to me. The practice of openness in particular was very important to me. Anytime I found any form of contraction in myself, I wanted to know, why was I contracting? What belief systems were in play? And I'd undo them all, because I wasn't interested in contracting that way again when that same trigger came. And so in the practice of openness, there was a great undoing of the psyche. And so 11 years later, or actually 10 years later, when I first came in touch with the Advaita Vedanta teachers in Perth, there was a readiness, because the mind had really mastered surrender through the practice of openness, the practice of serving heart. And so the moment one of these Advaita teachers, Isaac Shapiro, walked in the room, awakening occurred, Satori occurred. And then from that date, it took another 12 months and 1,000 Satoris. And then one day, the Satori never stopped. It's been there for 21 years now. It's just awareness on awareness. And at this moment, awareness also on the screen here, and the sound of birds outside and whatever else is happening. But awareness is locked on itself, and has been now for 21 years. But those 11 years were a little heartbreaking, because I knew what I'd lost. I knew what I was missing, because I'd experienced self as truth. But I had settled for what I called manageable happiness. And that was in service of heart, which I call the beauty way.
If I haven't had a Satori, is it a good idea to practice with the aim of finding Satori?
If you want to. Depends on how... See, my thing was curiosity. A lot of people get into spirituality because they're looking to get away from discomfort or pain, because they've recognized how painful life is. But I never got into spirituality for that reason. I got into it because I was curious about this new mountain to climb, because I'd been in business for a long time and I'd succeeded in business, which is a mountain, if you like. And then spirituality presented itself when I was 28, and I went, "Ooh, this looks like a new mountain to climb." And I thought, I'll try climbing this mountain, see what happens. But I had to learn a new set of rules. In climbing the mountain in business, you need to learn to stand alone in resistance. But in higher consciousness, you need to learn to stand alone in surrender. And that's a lot harder, because you have to be vulnerable. You have to be open. You have to be fresh. But whatever we put our totality to, the chances are we will succeed. It's only when we're partial in life that we tend to fail. And so it's up to you. What are you going to do with your life?
What should I be doing now to become enlightened?
Wow, how about listening to an awakened teacher? Hey, there's an idea. Well, that's what I did. I hung out with the awakened ones. I hung out with people who were enlightened. And I was the guy who always had my hand up asking the questions, because I understood that it was all about energy, more about energy than anything else, more about frequency than anything else. And so when I could get my teacher's attention in asking a question or actually sponsoring them or whatever I was doing with them, it was slowly undoing me, and it was slowly lighting me up. I was using the doorway. The best thing you can do if you're interested in enlightenment is find someone who's awake and hang out with them.
I've heard people talk about being at different levels of enlightenment. Is there such a thing, or is enlightenment all or nothing?
Yeah, it seems that there are different levels of enlightenment, in that there seems to be a beginning stage which is more tamasic, and then there's a more active stage which is kind of what they call rajasic, and then there's a more sattvic stage. And in the active stage, people who are awake are doing a lot of things in the world. And in the sattvic stage, they kind of look like they're being wheeled out on fridge trolleys because they're so gone. 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟-𝐢𝐧𝐪, gone beyond. And I feel that my teacher, 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟-𝐢𝐧𝐪, by the time I met him in 1982 or 3, he was gone. He was in the sattvic stage of enlightenment. And I hear from other people that he was very active in the world before. And that, to me, would have meant he was in the rajasic stage of enlightenment. And somewhere in the early 80s, he had moved into the sattvic stage of enlightenment, which is gone. So I think there are different stages, but the bottom line is, I don't know. It's my best guess.
The next question is from Satya.
Hi, Satya.
Hello, Vishrant. Vishrant, when someone has Satoris, like through meditation, they experience as universe or like melt down heart and openness of heart. When have Satoris, then there is no search for God or nothing. But after this Satori, after this awakening, again, due to ego, person fall down is like from hill to ground or whatever it is. So that time, which is very, very, when again came back to lower consciousness, it is very painful. So it's like fall down. And so I just want to ask you, on that situation, in this position again, how person can stable himself and how he can again go back on his spiritual path and towards enlightenment.
Okay. So I can only really talk about my own experience, Satya. And what I did is I gave my life to heart. And then when Satori started again, I gave my life to truth. And that might be a little misunderstood because I'm talking about a totality here. I gave my life to heart. In other words, I gave my life to service of others. And when it came to enlightenment, because I started experiencing Satoris, I gave my life at that point to truth. And that doesn't have an after. That's unconditional surrender, which means if I had have died in the process, that was also okay. There wasn't going to be an after. It was a full stop. That's unconditional surrender. And for someone to wake up, that unconditional surrender is a requirement. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely, Vishram. Because it is really very painful, you know, to fall back on, come back into lower consciousness. So, yeah, it takes time. I don't know, but a bit difficult to come back again. But,
yes, it's true. It's the contrast is quite strong. Give truth your totality, give heart your totality. You see, at some point, you even give up your preferences because you give them to truth as well.
But Vishwant, when we had this kind of Satori and major Satori or awakening, but till now, sometimes when knows everything and till now mind is over there. So these things I couldn't understand. Again, awareness come back to mind. So can you just bring light on this, please?
I'm not sure what your question is. I mean, if you lose Satori, awareness just goes back to the mind and you're left with the mind again. That's actually what happens. I'm not sure what your question is though.
Yeah, this is my question, but when there is, the picture is very clear and again awareness come back to the mind, I don't know why was that, because when you know something clearly and again awareness come back to the mind. So
yeah, but you're talking about memory. You're talking about knowing from memory, not from direct experience. You see, true knowing is knowing in the moment. In other words, that is Satori. Beingness, the mind is knowing. Beingness is aware of itself in the moment. If it's held in a memory, it's just a dream.
Oh, okay.
And it's not real. There's nothing real about dream. So you can't actually remember who you are and wake up. That's not a possibility. Remembering itself is dreaming. Dreaming doesn't wake people up. Only the direct experience or knowing of awareness being aware of itself. And that happens in the moment, not before.
Okay, Vishrant, thank you. So, Vishrant, what is the difference in between energy and beingness?
Well, everything is beingness. Everything is beingness, and energy appears in beingness. It's a bit like beingness is the sky, and in the sky appears the clouds, and they come and they stay a while and then they leave. Like in beingness, everything comes, stays a while, and then leaves. So my definition of reality is that it doesn't change, which means the only thing that I believe to be real is beingness, because it doesn't change.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Vishrant. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, look, a lot of people have this understanding, which is a wrong understanding. It's a New Age understanding that you can remember who you are and somehow wake up. And it's an absolute lie. Because when you're remembering, you're lost in a dream of remembrance of the past. And awakening is awareness being aware of itself, which is reality. The dream has nothing to do with reality. Awakening is beyond the mind, not in the mind. You can't wake up in the mind. It is awareness being aware of itself. It's different.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Vishrant.
Thank you, Satya.
The following question is from a viewer. Is serving heart and not truth the best place to start if I haven't had a Satori?
Serving heart is always a good place to start because it's a beautiful way to live. There is nothing beautiful about being selfish, and there is nothing beautiful about being self-obsessed. As a matter of fact, when you really look at it, it's miserable to be self-obsessed and it's miserable to be selfish. There's so much beauty in serving heart, in being in service to help other human beings or animals or the planet or anything but you. And so it's a way of life towards enlightenment. The way of the heart is a pathway to enlightenment. And it's a beautiful pathway. Sometimes it's inconvenient. So what? What else you got to do? We're stuck here anyway. We've got the body, we're stuck here. Why not be in service of heart? Why not find a beautiful way to live?
What do you mean when you speak of giving your preferences to truth?
Well, what happens as you go higher and higher in consciousness, you recognize that the mind, the particularly identified part of the mind, starts becoming very helpful. And so it hides out in helper thoughts. And it hides out in preferences. And so these are the last bastions of the I before it surrenders completely. I'm helping become enlightened. No, you're now in the way. My preferences, I prefer to be comfortable over uncomfortable. No, now you're in the way again. You let go of absolutely everything. That's unconditional surrender.
So what happens to your personality when you lose your preferences?
Nothing. That's the problem. Your personality. They have this saying in Zen, I think it's before awakening, chopping wood and carrying water. After awakening, chopping wood and carrying water. If you want to change your personality, you better do it before enlightenment, because after enlightenment, there's no motivation to change anything. Before enlightenment, there might be motivation, but after enlightenment, you are profoundly content for no reason. And you may see that the mind is broken or dysfunctional in some way, but it's perfectly broken and it's absolutely okay. You want to change something about yourself, best do it before awakening.
Next, Sacha would like to ask another question.
Okay.
So, Vishrant, surrendered mind also, in a way, towards enlightenment?
Heck yeah. Well, it's basically a surrendered mind will not contract and attract awareness to itself. So say you're self-inquiring and awareness becomes aware of itself, which is a Satori, and the mind doesn't contract, it doesn't pull awareness back to itself. And so that type of mind is called an equanimous mind, a mind that's not reacting anymore, but can respond when necessary.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Vishrant.
Yeah, cool. A mind that is cool.
Okay.
The next question is from Kalimba.
Hi, Kalimba.
Hi, Vishrant. This is a little tricky one for me. You said yesterday that we need to be able to question our teachers, and I've been coming to your sets. I don't think I've missed one of them, and I've got a lot out of it. But where I get confused with this one is you tell us we've got to transcend the I. You tell us that the past is a dream, it's not real. And yet,
the I can't be transcended, by the way. The I can't transcend. It's not real in the first place.
But yeah, I know, but that's, I'm taking that on board. But then the critical part of me goes, you use the word I or me sometimes over 100 times in the discourse.
Yeah,
and you tell the story of you so many times. I mean, the number of times I've heard this happened in that year, that happened in that year, I did this, 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 and this. And yet you said just now, memory is a dream, and yet you're always in your memory.
I have to. Otherwise, I can't communicate. People aren't ready to meet me where I live, Kalimba. I live in silence. I don't live in noise. My mind doesn't talk to itself. So I actually talk so people can meet. I can meet people where they live and then invite them to where I live. If I just talked without I's and me's, I wouldn't really be able to get the message out there. I wouldn't be able to meet people where they're at as clearly as I can by using I's and me's. Yet in looking inside of myself, there is absolutely no sense of I or me. It could be that I'm relating your story to people rather than my own. There's just no connection to it. There's no attachment. It doesn't even feel like this has got anything to do with me. But I got to look at this 20 years ago because I realized there was no I, but then using the English language, I found it tremendously difficult to try to communicate with people who were ego-based without using I's and me's. And I saw the fallacy in it. And so I started using self-disclosure to make people feel that they had a chance for enlightenment, that they were actually like I was. Because when I was with Osho, he was so regal and so royal and so far away from what I was like, I actually felt that enlightenment was out of my reach. And so I've put on a persona to enable people to see that it's possible for anyone to wake up. And I do that through self-exposure and the use of the personal. But in no way known do I experience myself as personal.
Yeah, I first connected with Osho when he was Bhagwan back in Pune. And I hear totally what you're saying. It was like, I hardly ever heard him use the term I, but his enlightenment stage or the way he presented it was different to yours. And as you've described, there are different levels. One of the things I loved in Pune, I don't know whether you went to Pune, but in the front office, there were these three women who looked after the commune for him. There was Lakshmi, there was Arup, and there was Sheila. And I loved with Lakshmi. Lakshmi never used the I. She always said, Lakshmi would like to say that this is happening. And then when she did this yesterday, and it was just so like eye-opening to hear that and sort of, oh, she was just lovely.
If I did that in Australia, I think it would put people off.
And you'd be locked up as being crazy.
Well, that wouldn't be a problem because I don't have, I really don't mind where I am. But I worked it out that if I'm going to be able to be effective in this material world, I need to meet people where they're at and communicate with them on a level that they understand. And I found that self-exposure was probably one of the better ways to do that. In other words, telling the story of Vishrant from the Vishrant perspective. It made it look ordinary because the truth is, it is ordinary. But when we start not using the I or the me and not talking about our own story, it becomes extraordinary and it becomes out of people's reach.
Yeah, it was getting clearer earlier today when you were talking about the different kinds of awakenness. And it was like, because this has been on my mind for a couple of days and I'm still shaking, I felt I had to jump out and say this and sort of like, oh, I don't want to say it, but I need to say it because my mind's getting caught up in it. So thank you. Excuse me, thank you.
It's a great question. When awakening first occurred 21 years ago, I just sat in silence for 18 hours a day, every day for 6 months, and stared into space because I didn't blink even. I had to learn how to blink. I had to learn how to look away. I had to learn how to be a human again because the break from the minds was so great. The awakening was so great. So I had to learn to behave like a human being again. And in learning to behave like a human being again, I realized that people couldn't meet me where I was living. They couldn't meet me in the silence and stillness. And so for me to be a teacher of higher consciousness, I had to meet them where they lived. And so I adapted the I, the me, and the self-exposure.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I guess one of my problems with enlightenment is that I kind of have this dream of wanting to get out of the marketplace. And my little dream is to have a cottage on a hillside looking out over the sea, no computers, no phones, none of that stuff, and just be in that kind of dream state.
Yeah.
But I guess, as you said, there are different sorts. And the most useful sort is the one you use, which is to find yourself and then be back in the marketplace to be able to share it. Mine is sort of an escapism.
It is. And Osho said, look, if you find the truth is yourself, or if you find the flame, share it. Don't be selfish with it. Don't hide it, you know. And there was, for the first 6 months, there was a fair bit of hiding of it. Not deliberately. It was just that there was no interest in actually talking to people. The profound contentment was so great that I was happy to sit in my room by myself all day long, just blissed out. And coming out into the marketplace, when you're that open and that sensitive, is quite painful anyway.
Yep.
But if we're going to be in the marketplace, I've got to present myself in a way that can be understood by ordinary people. And as soon as I do a Lakshmi thing where I start avoiding I's and me's, I'm going to come across as a weirdo.
Yeah. All right, thanks for that, mate. I just had to share that one because it's been in my mind, and I live in my mind a lot. I live in my heart a lot too, because I'm always connecting with strangers. I walk down the beach and I see somebody I've never seen, and I say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And you see the light, as you've explained. People go, "Oh, wow, here's somebody who sees me."
Mm.
And it's really beautiful to be like that. But this is other part of me that just wants to shut the doors, sit on the hill, watch the sunset, and just space out.
Mm. Look, I had a look at what Osho did in the early 80s, where he did that 4 years of silence.
Yeah.
And I don't think it worked, because I don't think people could truly meet him where he was living.
Yeah, and the unfortunate side effect of that was Sheila got to be the controller, and that's where it all went to her head, and she fell apart.
Yeah, because he wasn't in touch with what was happening. He was totally out of touch. So she went wild. Such is life.
Yeah. What they say, I can't remember the exact quote. All power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
They do. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I start not being able to talk. I start losing language every day. because the pull-in is so great and the awareness is leaving the world and going more back on itself.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about that. It just happens. It's like I become very inhuman late in the afternoon because there's just nothing out here.
Yep. All right. Thank you for addressing that, mate.
Okay. No, all challenges, all questions are welcome, Kalimba. If I can't ask them, I shouldn't be holding this seat.
You're right. Thanks, mate.
The next question is from a viewer. When I think of giving my life to others, I feel resistance. What should I do about this?
Work out how happy your life is serving you. I got to see at the ripe old age of about 33 that I'd been around the block so many times just making it work for me that I was pretty much tired of it. It was just repetition, repetition, repetition. And I was looking for a more beautiful way to live life. And I had started experiencing my heart, love. And I realized, yes, there is another way to live here. Because just living for yourself is, after a while, it becomes ugly. It just does. And so I decided to give my life to heart. And that meant being in service to everybody and everything. And my life, I've never had a regret over that. It was very beautiful to do. And it took a lot of practice to get it right because I was programmed to be selfish. I was programmed to be self-obsessed. And I had to practice a lot to not be like that. But it was worth it. How many times do you have to be around the block serving yourself before you get sick of it? Really?
How do I not fall into the trap of believing I'm more advanced than I actually am?
I think you missed the word trap there. I think you said, how do I... What, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. How do I not fall into the trap of believing I'm more advanced?
You said trap, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the word I'm missing. The trap of thinking you're advanced. Well, everyone does that. They go to a few satsangs or they listen to a series of videos or YouTubes and they think they've got spirituality down. They read a few books and they've got it. Unfortunately, now they're totally stuck because they think they know. And the moment we think we know, we are truly stuck. The beginner's mind, developing and having the beginner's mind allows the universe to pour through us. And the beginner's mind dictates, really, I don't know. The moment we think we know, we've closed ourselves off. It's best to always stay with, I don't know, always. Otherwise, it is a trap. And it's a very common trap for seekers, particularly if they've been into spirituality for a long time and collected a lot of knowledge. They start feeling superior. But there's no such thing as superior. And there's no such thing as inferior. There is a difference. There is awake and there is not awake. But as long as you think you know, if you're ego-based, you're actually stuck. You're not advanced at all. Hope that answers that.
You've said that there is nothing in the ego there is nothing for the ego in enlightenment. What motivates an ego-based person to go for enlightenment if there is nothing in it for them?
Well, at the point that you really realize that the ego doesn't wake up or there's nothing in it, the mind is already in love with truth. And in that love affair, it becomes willing to die for truth. It becomes willing to give itself to truth. It's at the top end, it's a love affair. It's a real love affair. The mind just loves truth and will not betray it. The mind has the understanding that truth is the beloved, and everything for the beloved and nothing for you is what works. It's a good deal. It's a really good deal.
How does one develop a love affair for truth?
Well, you've got to raise your consciousness levels high enough So you start experiencing truth as self. And you do that through the practices of openness, meditation, self-inquiry, removing the obstacles that are in the way. There's a lot of different practices. One of my main practices was just openness. It really just clears everything out. But most people don't practice openness. They actually practice defensiveness and closure. And unfortunately, that keeps them locked in lower consciousness.
What is the best thing a seeker can do when they come into the presence of an awakened teacher?
Sorry, you're breaking up quite badly. I didn't really get that. Can you say it again, please?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can, but you're breaking up. I don't know why, if you're turning away from your microphone or something when you're speaking, I don't know, but you're breaking up.
Okay. I'm not turning away. I'll read it again. What is the best thing a seeker can do when they come into the presence of an awakened teacher?
Tune in. See if you can't find the frequency of the Buddha field that will be being put out. Because when someone's awake, a Buddha field is produced. When awareness is aware of itself, or beingness is aware of itself, there's an energy field that is produced. And if you tune into it, it's a bit like a radio frequency. Once you've got the frequency, you can tune into it any time. But in the beginning, you're not sure of it. If you tune into that frequency, your own mind can start to expand and disappear, and you can start to find yourself as truth. And so my process was very simple with my teachers. I just tuned in and tuned in and tuned in and let go of anything that was in the way.
If there are many lives, does someone who becomes enlightened have to come back again?
We'll find out, won't we? I don't think so. But there's always the possibility that you want to come back to help people. So you don't know until you're on your death. When that moment comes, any desire can bring you back. So if you have the desire to come back and help people, that can bring you back. But I don't think it's necessary for someone who's awake to come back. They've already died as an I. But you never know. We'll see.
What is the role of relaxation in preparing the mind for awakening? Are activities that relax the mind helpful, or can they be in the way of finding truth?
Relaxing the mind is very important. If you are looking to put awareness on awareness, it's very difficult to do if you don't have a relaxed mind. Being cool is having a relaxed mind. Having an equanimous mind is a relaxed mind. And to be truly relaxed, awareness can stay on itself because it's not being attracted back to the noisiness or the contraction of the mind. And so relaxation is very important. Unfortunately, we have grown up in a society that's not very big on relaxation. It's very big on being efficient and noisy. And so we need to learn to be able to be relaxed without doing drugs or alcohol. and that takes a bit of practice in itself, to just be cool, to be relaxed, to not be uptight, to not be constantly trying to solve problems in our heads, which we were programmed to do at school, but to just be here without all of that nonsense. And so learning to be relaxed is very important, because it's only really, when you look at it, a relaxed mind that will support enlightenment.
Were you able to tune into the Buddha field without being in the presence of your teachers?
Yeah, I was, but that was after the first Satori, when 𝐬𝐸𝐴𝐧𝐥𝐿 came into the room, And after that, I was able to find beingness through the practice of self-inquiry, asking who's aware. And so I was able to use the mind to turn awareness back to itself. And I would have done that a couple of 100,000 times, I guess. I was pretty disciplined and keen on finding beingness as self. And so I practiced it every day and every night. Oh, and towards the end, every thought that arose was challenged with who's aware. Every thought. None got through.
Can you please talk about the price you have to pay in enlightenment?
Well, the price is you. You as an I. You don't really survive enlightenment. Unconditional surrender, which is a requirement for enlightenment, is a death of the I. It's the end. It's an over. It's a full stop. It's not like you die because you're not the I in the first place. You think you are when you're an I, but you're not. You can actually be here without an I. And a lot of the time during the day, you actually are. And then the I comes in, the identified one comes in and claims that it's you. But a lot of the time, the I is not there. Well, it's someone who's enlightened, the I is not there. It's gone because it's in the unconditional surrender, it's just gone. Awareness is aware of itself. And so whatever's left of it, because there's a little bit left of it, otherwise you can't operate in the material world. It's just not believed to be real. It's not believed to be who you are. It's just obviously not. You're beingness. You are that. You can't be anything other than that. The I was just a costume that you were wearing for a little while, a spacesuit that identified itself as you, but falsely. You are that. You have always been that. You can be none other than that. You are pure beingness. Thank you for satsang. Good to see brave hearts here today.